4 o'clock on Tuesday, April 4th. I'd like to call the Community Impact Grants Committee meeting to order. Madam Clerk, if you would call the roll, please.
Branham.
Present.
Livingston.
Present.
Barron. Mackey.
Here.
English.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. I will note, just for the record, that Councilwoman Gretchen Barron did notify me ahead of time that she would not be able to attend the council meeting today due to prior obligations. Next item on the agenda is approval of minutes from our March 21st meeting. Do we have any edits, deletions to the minutes?
No, ma'am.
A motion?
Second.
Second. Any discussion? All right, hearing none, I'll call for the vote. Madam Clerk?
Branham.
Yes.
Livingston. Mackey.
Yes.
English.
Yes.
Next item on the agenda is the number 3, adoption of the agenda. Do we have any changes to the agenda as presented?
No requested changes.
Thank you.
Proof.
Have a motion for approval?
Second.
Second. All right, any discussion? Madam Clerk, would you call the vote?
Branham.
Yes.
Livingston. Mackey.
Yes.
English.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Thank you. Item number 4 is item for discussion/action. 4A is proposed list of community partners. And so before we go into discussion of this item, just want to remind committee members kind of where we're at in this process. A few committee meetings ago, we agreed upon the recommendation for the amount of funding that we'd like to see in the upcoming budget. That recommendation is going to full council tonight in preparation for our upcoming budget. So we'll actually see that amount in the budget as we work to approve it for next year and actually set our parameters and funding. The next item that we discussed as a committee is looking at the process at which we would approve organizations. And committee members brought up that there are some organizations that we have funded for years that are, for lack of a better term right now, we refer to them as community partners, ones that have provided essential services and that we just continue to work with for many, many years. And so the kind of action item that left out of that committee meeting was for council members to go and review and bring back to staff, the clerk, or myself of recommendations of what or who those organizations are that you deemed as community partners, ones that we would look at funding in a different way, perhaps, than ones that would be competitive funds. And so as you would see below for 4A, 1 through 7 are the organizations that have been received. These are recommended organizations that would receive funding under the Community Impact Grant funding amount, but would not necessarily go through a competitive process. These organizations are ones that the committee believes are our partners and that we would work to set aside funding. So I want to open up the meeting for discussion on these 7 organizations, thoughts on if they are right, thoughts on if we're missing anyone or if we need to remove anyone. So. Mr. Livingston, you're recognized.
Especially from historical perspective, I'm okay with all the ones that are listed, but more importantly, though, I think one of the things that we're missing in the past, though, is very clear some kind of agreement or deliverables or whatever it is, so we can be very clear on exactly, what our money is being used for. I don't think that's very clear in the past.
I definitely agree, Mr. Livingston. I think if we have a number of organizations that we agree with, I do think the next step would be solidifying those parameters and what information we'd like to see and what commitments we'd like to see from the organization each year. Ms. English, you recognize?
Chair, the only one, and I'm not sure if they even qualify, that's not on here, that addresses so much, and that would be the Oliver Gospel Mission, but I don't know if they, it is.
Ms. English, I'll note on pages 8 through 10 in the packet, we do have historical funding by organization by amount to look at kind of where the county has supported organizations in the past, if you want to use that as a reference. And you can see Oliver Gospel Mission is listed. They are on page 9, third up from the bottom. And they have not been one that has been historically funded, but have received funding. Mr. Branham, you're recognized.
I appreciate Councilwoman praising that organization's name in particular, just from my life experience of working with Oliver Gospel Mission. And I feel like maybe the primary driving principle that I have in my mind when I look at the question, this question is got a lot to do with helping the helpless. As a very simple saying, and it could mean a lot of things to a lot of different people, but that's those things. When I think about that, I do think about homeless. I think about people struggling with addiction. I think about those that are, looking for their next meal. So my mind, probably most of the recurring type partners that I'd like to support would somehow fall under that type of mission or category. Some of these organizations I'm just not as familiar with. Of course, we all have our limitations of experience. But in the studies that I did on the 7 that I reviewed under item 4A, senior resources, Mercy, the Transitions Homeless Center, and then potentially Meadow AIDS Life Support. I see those as fitting under that sort of mission at their very core. And then, I will note that the Columbia Chamber of Commerce and their partnership with other local governments to work to support the maintaining of Fort Jackson in our community, as well as McIntyre Air National Guard Base. It sounds like there's a great return on investment that we receive by supporting the interventions that are conducted in Washington, D.C. on behalf of our community and that installation, in particular Fort Jackson. The information I've been given is that recently there's been up to $1 billion worth of new construction approved or completed. And even since COVID started winding down, an additional 1,200 jobs added out there at Fort Jackson. So I appreciate always the Chamber as a partner with our community. And for that reason, I would voice some support for them as well.
Thank you, Mr. Branham. I would like to recognize Councilwoman Interratio for joining us. Thank you.
Glad to be here.
Glad you're here. I think in addition to these 7, there's one additional one that I would like to add to the list, which is Pathways to Healing. They are an organization that we have supported historically, Richland County, and supported them in and a way in which they support our sheriff's department with our special victim advocates and helping to solve crimes related to sexual assault. And so they really truly have partnered with one of our departments in providing a service to our sheriff's department. And so that is one that we have seen great value in over the years, and definitely think they continue to be a true partner. Ms. Horatio, you recognized?
Yes, thank you, Ms. Mackey. I'll just echo that. I believe that is the organization that is supplying experts in sexual trauma to the sheriff's department to go respond alongside the deputies. So it's a really good model, and I just wanted to lend that support.
Thank you. All right, if there is no other discussion, and just again, I know we had Mr. Ratio join, so just so we're all clear, these list of community partners, and I'm using that name loosely or title loosely because I believe that there are many, many nonprofits in our community that are community partners. But for lack of another term right now, I'm referring to these specific ones as community partners, ones that we are looking at funding in a way that is not competitive, but still requiring, information from, an application from, and for them to provide evidence of impact each year, but not to compete in the competitive process. If the community decides to approve these organizations that are listed, it is not saying that we are not working with others. There's still other organizations that can apply through the competitive process. This does not limit any other organization receiving funding at all. And also, these organizations, we're not committing to an amount right now. We're just committing to saying, yes, these are the organizations that we want to deem as community partners, and that all others will apply and compete for funding as we go. So, if we don't have any other discussion, I'm open to hearing a motion.
I move to, for these 7 plus the 2 that were listed, Oliver Gospel Mission and Pathways to Healing, forward those to council.
I have a motion and a second to approve the 7 community partners listed, plus an additional 2, which is Oliver Gospel Mission and Pathways to Healing, as the committee's recommended community partners. Any discussion? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, call for the vote.
Branham,
Yes.
Livingston,
Yes.
Mackey,
Yes.
English.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Great. The next item is the proposed timeline. And so since we have agreed upon a funding amount for budget, we've set aside, okay, here are our community partners. We now need to look at a proposed timeline in which we would develop an application for these community impact grants and be able to put this out to the public so that they have time to apply and then award. So working with staff, we've developed the proposed schedule below, and would love to hear committee's feedback on thoughts on this timeline and if there's any other edits or changes. And I'll briefly walk through the timeline to make sure we are on the same page of kind of each step. So application development would be between now, so beginning of April through May 31st, working to develop an application. We previously used the application through our discretionary grants committee. And I think in talking with council members and even the organizations applying, there are some changes that could be made to that application that will result in, council getting more information and making it easier to utilize. And so looking at application development for Community Impact Grant Committee and having that completed by May 31st, with the application being open to the public July 1st. And we would utilize Zoom grants to do that. And then closing July 31st. And then having the review of the applications be from August 1st through August 21st. And this review period of applications would be council members and staff working together to review the applications that are received, make sure we have all of the requested documentation on file, and then council members being able to review it and provide their feedback. Funding would happen in September, and then the grant period would begin October 1st through June 30th. Any thoughts, concerns, Mr. Livingston?
How's this consistent with our normal budget process?
Administrator Brown, are you able to answer that question?
I'm going to actually ask ACA Thomas to address that from a budgetary perspective, please.
ACA Thomas, you're recognized.
And just I asked that question, just the main point, because we're talking about awarding funding awards in September. Don't we do that in July 1 now?
Mr. Livingston, typically we do. However, with this process, you would award a maximum amount in the budget, then the allocations that you award to the applicants would not exceed that amount. So your application process would follow after the budget.
So it'll be taken care of, but the money will be taken care of in the
Yes, sir.
process. Okay.
Yes, sir.
That makes sense. I was trying to figure that out.
Yeah.
So the amount that we previously approved in committee meeting goes to full council tonight. So that is the up to $1 million. That is the amount that we approved in committee that goes to council tonight, and council approves, then staff has that to then budget accordingly.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
I'm so glad. Any other comments or thoughts on the proposed timeline? Ms. English, you're recognized.
Just wanted to make sure that these funds still need to be expended by June 30th, the end of the fiscal year.
ACA Thomas.
That would be preferable. However, if we award later in the year and it's for a specific calendar year, we could always roll some of those funds over. We could work out the details on that if that were to be a case. But we could also say perhaps in working through the details, and I can report back to the committee on this, that what we would be able to do is allow a group that was awarded to recoup funds from the period July 1 to the award date. That could potentially be an option as well. Okay.
Did I answer your question, Ms. English? Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions on timeline or concerns about timeline?
Satisfied enough.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the timeline as presented. Any discussion? Madam Clerk?
Yes.
Livingston,
Yes.
Mackey,
Yes.
English.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Thank you. So knowing that we have gone through the list of community partners and proposed timeline, the next steps for this committee would be to really start thinking about the criteria that we would like to see in the application, and be able to start working to pull that application together. So please, if you have thoughts, be thinking of that. Staff will be sending out the application that we previously used for you to look at and give feedback on. But note that the next meetings that we schedule, we will have several that we need to get through to meet this deadline, but it will be focused on the application and requirements. I do think, we worked hard as a body to develop our strategic plan this year. I do think it'll be good for us to look at aspects of that strategic plan and make sure that we're tying it to organizations that we're funding so that we can actually move the needle on some of those initiatives that we would like to accomplish in the next 3 years. But if there's other criteria that you all would like to see or bases, please be thinking about those and be ready to bring those to the next committee meeting. Any other items for discussion?
I'd like
Mr.
to
Livingston?
just think about maybe a name for this group. Not now, but
Yes, so a better name instead of community partners, a better name for those non-organizations. Yes, I like that, Mr. Livingston. All right, we're at item 5, adjournment.
Move to adjourn.
Madam Clerk?
Brenham,
Yes.
Livingston,
yes.
Mackey,
Yes.
English.
Yes.
Motion approved.
All right, we're adjourned.